this race, generally speaking, and I'm not necessarily saying Mr. Tallarico, and frankly, the statements that this young lady said that Mr. Tallarico made about me, which I've served with Tallarico as well as Allred, he did not say anything derogatory about me. I will say, though, that this race has been racially charged. There's been some racial overtones as it relates to podcast pundits and things like that. And frankly, I do believe that one of the reasons that our country is in the position that it is in right now is because of divisiveness. And frankly, I just hope and pray that as we go through this primary as well as general, that we can kind of focus on the real concerns and threats right now, the things that are making life unaffordable. It's not the policies of the Democrats. It's actually the Republicans. And I want to make sure that we're focusing on what matters most to Texans.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett there. It's Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. And this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch. Rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Progressives in Texas remain fixated on the new racial drama that's erupted within the race for the Democratic nomination for Senate after accusations against candidate and state representative James Tallarico of making racist remarks against former opponent and former Congressman Colin Allred in a private conversation from a black social media influencer, amplified in an angry video posted by Allred on Monday. As we heard there, Tallarico's current opponent in this marquee race, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, has responded. Eleanor Dearman at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram posted the video we drew that audio from. See that link in the show notes. To paraphrase, the Congresswoman says, quote, "I definitely don't think there's anything mediocre about Colin Allred. It's kind of hard to become the Democratic nominee for Senate in the state of Texas, and he had a primary as well, and he went up against a sitting state senator, so he was put through the ringer. I've known him as a colleague. I've known him before either one of us was ever elected to office. I know about the fights that he was waging as a civil rights lawyer, that kind of stuff, as somebody who's known him for years. I know that he felt like it was his responsibility to speak up for himself and speak up for other black men," unquote, adding that she's never heard James Tallarico say anything racial, and noting that Tallarico has been complimentary of her on the campaign trail, including in their recent AFL-CIO debate. The sudden and seismic racial tensions in this race erupting this week are gaining national attention. J. David Goodman at the New York Times notes that they've definitely marred the veneer of positivity Texas Democrats had hoped to maintain, injecting a raw and politically sensitive debate over identity and race into the final weeks before the primary and undercutting recent enthusiasm following a decisive Democratic upset victory for Taylor Ramett in the SD9 special election runoff just a few days ago. Among black supporters of Ms. Crockett, a debate previously confined to online spaces has suddenly burst into the mainstream in an unvarnished way. This tension is further complicated by national Democrats publicly suggesting that Mr. Tallarico is the more electable choice for the general election. Electability. That term is now central to the argument, with some, including Shay Jordan Smith, a Democratic political strategist in Houston who is black and is supporting Ms. Crockett, saying of it, quote, "When they talk about electability, it's dog whistles, and it's allusions to speaking about her race, speaking about her being a woman. They want to call her ghetto and black and trash so bad, but they don't say that," unquote. Meanwhile, others amidst this chaotic conversation have clearly not accepted Rep. Tallarico's assertion that he was referring to Colin Allred's campaigning style and performance in 2 consecutive Senate runs by using the word mediocre, rather sticking to the idea that that word was used by him as a comment on Allred's race. Sandhya Raghavan, a spokeswoman for Mr. Allred, says, quote, "When a former NFL player, civil rights attorney, and former congressman can be dismissed as mediocre, it reveals the impossible standards black candidates are held to. Colin refused to accept that disrespect in silence, and in doing so, he stood up for every black professional who has had their qualifications unfairly dismissed," unquote. Other voices point out that racial commentary is not unique to this situation, nor is this situation a first for it. Trey Easton, Vice President for Policy at the Searchlight Institute, says, quote, "Jasmine Crockett is literally on the record saying Latinos have a slave mentality, and there's tape of her casting aspersions on mediocre white boys," unquote. In short, for now and just days before an incredibly important primary, the profile of the Texas Democratic Party has gone from inspiration and potential based on decisive local victories to one of potentially insurmountable racial division. Voters looking to escape the turmoil and drama of 2026 under Trump might be understandably tuning out at this point. I find the whole thing a giant bummer. And when I'm bummed out, I can generally rely on Michelle Davis at Lone Star Left to pick me back up with her great work. For those of us looking to get back to the high highs of this last weekend, Davis has a nice analysis of both the SD9 Remit victory and the win of Christian Menifee in the CD18 race to check out. In summary, Davis notes that the swearing in of Christian Menifee reduces the GOP's advantage in the U.S. House to 1 vote, that Menifee topped challenger Amanda Edwards with over double the votes cast for her, and draws contrast between the two candidates' funding sources. Edwards' war chest, drawn mostly from high-dollar establishment networks, including corporate PACs, only about 6% from small donations of $200 or less, while Menifee's fundraising was of a more grassroots nature, 23% from smaller dollar donors and 93% from individuals. Davis also attributes the Menifee victory to a much higher degree of organizing in the district and the fact that he ran very much openly as a progressive. Over to Taylor Remit. Almost a 14-point victory over Republican Lee Wamsgans. Davis leans on data from Granbury campaign finance researcher Chris Tackett, which mostly dismisses the notion of longtime SD9 Republican voters crossing over. Rather, this was, quote, long-ignored Democratic voters finally energized, moderate independents choosing sanity over extremism, strategic primary voters coming home, and a low turnout special election where motivated progressives actually showed up. Imagine that. Great rundown from Lone Star Left on both these races in the show notes. And sticking with SD9 and backtracking a bit to the top here, racial considerations are not only a factor that Democrats are wrestling with right now. Liz Crampton at Politico writes that Republicans are freaking out about Hispanic voters in Texas after that upset trouncing, a 14-point victory in a Fort Worth-based state Senate district that Donald Trump had won by 17 points just a couple of years ago is plenty to set off alarm bells for the MAGA set, especially considering that the massive 31-point swing we saw in this runoff was largely driven by Hispanic voters, who reportedly supported Remit by a 9-1 margin in some areas. Republican types, including Senator Ted Cruz and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, are describing this loss as a wake-up call and a very concerning outcome for the party standing with Texas Latinos, who are now the state's largest ethnic group, comprising 40% of our population. The backlash is being attributed to hardline federal immigration policies and unfulfilled economic promises made by Trump and Governor Abbott and Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, and on down the list. Remit, as an Air Force veteran and union leader, through another impressive organizing effort in Northern Tarrant County, was able to successfully pivot the conversation to local issues like public school funding and working-class economic concerns. And here's an up note to close on. The Donald Trump ordered and Greg Abbott delivered redistricting of our congressional maps, let's recall, leaned heavily on the idea that the support Trump enjoyed from Hispanic voters in Texas in 2024 would be permanent. The SD9 runoff result is definitely a powerful harbinger that a lot of that Trump support among Texas Latino voters has significantly evaporated. Once again, the March primary looms, y'all. Early voting in the primary starts on February 17th. That's now less than 2 weeks from today. See the show notes for Texas 2026 March primary ballot form from the Texas Tribune that you can use right now with your home address to see who's running in the primary in which you choose to vote. Everything you need to know about voting can be found at govotetexas.org. We're excited to see you this weekend. Friday, February 6th through Sunday the 8th, we'll be at the Texas Democratic Women's 2026 State Convention at the Austin Marriott South. TDW is celebrating their 39th year uniting the diverse Democratic women of Texas and growing their participation and influence in Texas politics and government. Proceeds from the convention support the general election campaigns of Democratic women in various races across the state. Progress Texas will be leading a workshop on the use of social media in politics starting at 4 p.m. on Saturday the 7th. All the details are linked in the show notes. Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared, bold, progressive values. And that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded disinformation machine. While we enjoy the support of hundreds of partners, chances are that you, dear listener, haven't joined the team yet. If you're a regular, let's get you on board right now. Huge thanks to Marguerite Stewart, Melinda Jemison, and Daniel Leonard, all three of whom are on the team. We appreciate all of you very much. Join them and the fun at ProgressTexas.org. And also, a chance to fund Spanish media in Texas. Progress Texas is expanding our top-rated podcast network to include Spanish-speaking media to increase the reach of our progressive messages daily. See the link in the show notes to make your donation towards Spanish media today. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is an independent, nonprofit, rapid response media organization. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media in action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.